Entering the atmosphere in T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, reunited with Dakota Lasky, doing Animal Crossing. Thank you guys for taking care of last week for me. You know what? I actually haven't even listened to last week's show, but I'm sure it was awesome. How are you guys? How have you been?
Yeah, pretty good. So we kind of had a spur of the moment idea for last week. We had a lot of discussions in the Discord, talking about, whether or not, Metroid needs to become more or less of a Metroidvania, and we thought it was a really interesting discussion, so we just kind of did an impromptu episode and kind of, went off the cuff about it, and it turned out really well, so if you have time, I definitely recommend giving it a listen.
Yeah, it was a good show. Good to have you back, Andy, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty good on my end. It's the end of the summer, so yeah, I'm oh, my cat's I'm gonna have to open the door for the cat in a second as he just lunks away. Flying out to Dallas tomorrow for the Rocket League World Championships, which is going to be a lot of fun. So I'll be in Texas for the weekend.
Nice.
But yeah, everything's going pretty well.
Nice. Yeah, we were chatting before, and that sounds that sounds awesome. So we're gonna bring back a newer sub-series that we have here, the Logbook Archives. But before we get there, I did want to spend a second with you gentlemen talking about the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Pro. This has taken a lot of flack online, and as we are recording, this was revealed earlier today. The official price tag of the PS5 Pro was $700 US, which is a lot of cheddar. I wanted to get, I already kind of know your guys' reactions. We talked about it a little bit in the Discord, but maybe for everybody that, isn't a part of our Discord, which you should be, by the way, because that's where we had that really great conversation last week about does Metroid need to be more of a Metroidvania or less of one to succeed. But I kind of know what you guys think, but for everyone else, what were your thoughts when you saw this? Because I don't know. I just had a real hard time, and I kind of was thinking, like, other than, as you put it, Dak, like the whales, like the diehards, like, who is this for, and how many of those people exist in the world? Because man, oh man, like at that point, I think the general consensus is like, build a PC.
Yeah, so the PS5 Pro, this thing has been rumored for, I want to say, like a year or two now, and I'm already not really the biggest fan of like the Pro console concept in general. Like, I kind of tolerated the PS4 Pro and not the Series X, the One X. Get your names better, Xbox. But I tolerated it for that one time because when those consoles did come out, a lot of devs were complaining about, like, some of the specs, like, hey, we don't have enough RAM for these new consoles, and we have to make a lot more concessions than we're comfortable with. And so it made I still didn't like it, but like it made sense why there were Pro consoles during that time. I already don't see the need for a PS5 Pro when, like, the PS5 is already, like, obviously it's not as powerful as a PC, but we're really not seeing the PS5 making that much in terms of concessions. I mean, if anything, so much of that library is playable on PS4 and plays fantastically. I mean, you got the Horizon 2 that still plays phenomenally on PS4. Spider-Man Miles Morales that launched on both consoles, and it plays fantastic on both consoles.
Yeah,
and there's probably plenty of others as well. And so I never really saw the point of a PS5 Pro, and I'm even less interested today after seeing that price point. And that's obviously it's different than me because I got a PC, but like even if I didn't have a PC, like, I mean, it just doesn't appeal to me at all in the slightest. And
no, I'm buying a Steam Deck before I buy that. Like,
yeah,
so
pretty much like
portably.
Yeah, pretty much like you reiterated, the only people I see this appealing to are like the diehard Sony enthusiasts and like very niche tech enthusiasts that are just interested in checking out, all the latest and newest tech. But otherwise, I don't really know who this is for.
Yeah.
It's for suckers. That's
Yeah.
that's who it's for.
Aptly put. Yeah. I don't know. Like I just like I'm kind of hoping that there's not going to be any like games, I guess, that are going to be specific to the PS5 Pro. And I can't remember. I don't think there were any PS4 Pro specific games, but
No.
I could be wrong. Just a bizarre announcement because correct me if I'm wrong, but like I feel like the PS4 Pro kind of had an adverse effect on how many PlayStation 5 units were sold. Like, did it not? Because a lot of people were like, I already upgraded, so I'm not buying another PS5. And I have to assume, like, the PS6 isn't terribly far off. Maybe like 2-3 years tops. Like, that, I don't know. It just seems like a really weird move. Really weird.
Doesn't help because, obviously as consoles become more powerful, we're reaching. It's Moore's law. I can't remember, but like the more powerful the consoles get, the narrower and narrower those upgrades are going to get. And so whereas the PS4, obviously the PS4 Pro, not a full console upgrade, but even still, there was a fairly noticeable upgrade there. Whereas you go from the PS5 to the PS5 Pro, like yeah, it's still there, but it's like we're talking not that much. And again, you're gonna have to have special equipment to even get the most of that. Like, they're touting, oh, you can play Gran Turismo 7 in 8K. Well, less than 1% of your user base is going to have an 8K TV. And like of those people that have an 8K TV, how many people are you going to tell the difference between 8K and 4K? Like to see the difference between 8K, you need to have like a really big TV. You're not going to see it on like, on like a 50 or even a 60-inch TV for most people. Yeah, and so it's just or even the current consoles, they can go up to 120 FPS. Most people don't have a monitor or a TV that can go above 60 hertz, so most people aren't going to be getting those benefits, let alone even higher refresh rates. And so I feel like the people that are interested in that kind of performance are already going to have PCs anyways. And so just kind of reiterating what I said before, Sony fanboys and very niche tech enthusiasts.
Yeah, it was a head-scratching announcement that, I don't know, if you're looking forward to it, power to you. But yeah, let me know if you're buying a PlayStation 5 Pro, because I'm curious to know who you are. Anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about some Metroid here. We are going to be opening up the Logbook Archive. This is our sub-series that we do when we delve into the lore side of things over on the Metroid series, and we had a pretty good time talking a few months ago now, talking about our theories about who Silex is, what possibilities could be had with his character, and we liked it so much we're gonna do it again, and this time we're taking a look at the history, the evolution, and what we are hoping to see in the future iterations of the Metroid series of Samus's Gunship, which is like such an underrated thing, I feel like. And maybe underrated isn't the right word, but like there's such like a great sense of security when you see that gunship, and it just brings like a calming, nice presence to your heart when you see it during the course of a game. That we're here to talk about every single iteration of the gunship, the design of it, our favorites, our least favorites, some non-canonical Metroid appearances of the gunship as well, so we'll get to that, and what we're hoping to see from it going forward, just from a gameplay perspective, and you know what, maybe even from a design perspective. We'll see how that goes, but let's get started here and talk about Samus's Gunship. And I have to admit, I didn't know this. So the very, very first, non-canonical, but the very first appearance of this gunship was not in a game. It was in Victory Techniques for Metroid from Cosmo Liner, which for anybody exactly like me that had never heard of that before, it is a strategy guide that is released that was released right after the original Nestroid came out, and it's kind of it's almost like a comic in a sense, like it's a manga that it looks like. It looks like it's kind of quirky, a little bit funny, but I've never even heard of this thing before, but we might have to cover it on Manga and Review. And I guess this is the first time that we ever saw Samus's ship, so there you go, the introduction that nobody knew that existed.
Can you send me a link to that?
I can, yeah. I'll DM it to you after we're done. It looks like It looks like it's just a very short strategy guide manga, almost like Nintendo Power. But and the great thing about it is it's got close to that classic Nestroid art style, where like Samus kind of looks cartoony a little bit. It looks really cool. I'll post it in the notes here after we're done, so that everybody can check this out. But yeah, there you go. I had no idea that was the first time we ever saw. You know what? We should probably say a ship from Samus. Probably not her
I was gonna
starship.
say it's not really like her ship or anything. It's just they were just coming up with other things to draw in there. Like, well, Samus must have a ship, so we're gonna draw something for her. I think it's just meant to be
Not only that,
their
we've
vision
got a
of it.
Super Mario appearance in this comic as well, actually. So that tells you everything that you
You
should
know,
know.
we've talked about crossovers with Metroid on the show, not in a while, but I feel like the natural ones are Zelda and Star Fox that we've talked about, or like F-Zero.
Hmm.
But the Mario Metroid game, it's right there. It could happen. And I if we went back to like, how they do like the 2D like the 2D Zelda games that like look like, they look like dioramas and all that. Like I could see
Yeah.
like a cartoon, like a I've always said Paper Metroid would be fun, but like a more cartoony, like I hate to say chibi Metroid, but like in a fun way with a crossover with Mario, like I could see that being kind of fun.
I would
I
love
mean-
to see Metroid in that like Link's Awakening art style, like that toy art style. I think it would look
Exactly.
fantastic. And hey, Mario's been to the stars before.
We got the Mario RPG cameo, just saying. We even got the Paper Mario cameo, for the Paper Metroid thing you said earlier, so.
Yeah, there you go.
It needs to happen eventually.
Obviously, though, of course, the first canonical appearance of Samus's gunship, which is actually called her Starship in Metroid 2, which I've been playing a lot of lately, shows up in Return of Samus. And I think that we take for granted like just how incredible this sprite looks in this game. Like, and all the sprite work in Return of Samus is really, really awesome. But like, man, that sprite work for her ship just looks absolutely top notch. The only downfall of it is that you don't get to really spend any time on your ship in Return of Samus because you're constantly going deeper and deeper into the planet, which is a little bit too bad because it's just such a good looking sprite that you just want to hang out there. So of course that is the first time that we ever see the Starship.
Well, wait, that's not. Hold on. Are we talking about? Oh, you're talking about just like showing up in any Metroid game. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. That does show. I'm talking chronologically. That's not the first time.
Chronologically, it's
Sorry.
not the first. No. Well, how about this, guys? Do you want to go chronologically, or do you want to go kind of by like real life chronologically?
I was going
You're-
game by game, personally.
Okay.
You're the host of the show, Andy.
Well, I like to be, I like
It's
to
not
get
a
input.
democracy.
I like to, I'm a benevolent leader, and like to get everybody's.
But yeah, this is so the first time we see that's her iconic gunship in Return of Samus, because that appears in a bunch of other games as well. This is this is like the H.R. Geiger kind of Samus's ships,
Mhm.
like in that design. It has that like 80s like retro kind of style. Everything's like bulbous and bulky that I think the other ships do away with for sure.
Mhm.
And it's almost like a polar opposite to like the corruption gunship, right? Which is sleek and narrow. This is a really cool ship. I mean, it even comes back in Metroid Prime 2 for some reason. But I always thought like this ship looks best in 2D, like especially like just because of how big and like wide it is. It like kind of
Mhm.
it's like a monolith almost, right? It's very alien looking. Like it's
Yeah.
an alien. It very much is like an alien ship kind of looking at it, even though it's like almost looks like Samus's helmet as well. Yeah, I mean I think the most iconic version of it is probably the Super Metroid variant, but
I think
yeah,
so.
you're right. It does look really good in Return of Samus.
And a couple quick notes here, actually. So I'm taking a look here. The commercial that originally aired for Metroid 2 has a colorized version of the gunship, which really looks identical to the Super Metroid one. And I also didn't know this either, and I own one of these. It's right behind me. But the packaging for the Super Game Boy features Samus's gunship and Samus smack dab right on the front, which is kind of cool. I also didn't know that either until I started doing a little bit of digging. So yeah, just and the official artwork, of course, just looks like so fantastic. But I mean, you're right, Dak. Like the biggest, most memorable appearance of this gunship undoubtedly is from Super Metroid, and I think we all remember, landing in Criteria and stepping out with the rain and the wind, and like what an incredible moment that is, and that's really the first time that you see the gunship be utilized in the way that we associated with, where you could go back to it as a safe haven, recharge, save your game, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, probably the most iconic portion, or the most iconic version of the ship, I would dare say. Debatable, but I would dare say. And just a really awesome design. Particularly, I've always loved how like the front of the gunship just resembles Samus's visor. Just looks so good. And it's something about that yellow.
And this, I guess, for anyone who hasn't seen the ship recently, like this is like the flatter, like almost like mushroom kind of shaped ship, right? Obviously, that you see in Samus Returns and Super Metroid and Metroid Prime 2. I mean, it shows up in Smash Brothers. It shows up in like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. It's all over the place. But what I love about this, and you see this a bunch in, I guess, better probably in like Return of Samus, but also in Super Metroid, the underbelly of it, which is like all the like the cannons and like the three like kind of like pads that like the landing pads, which differ a little bit from like Metroid Prime, which have like those like leg looking kind of like afterburner rockets that move around, which are really cool. But yeah, like the mushroom, like it's almost like the top of Samus's head and like the back part of it. And it looks like Samus, as you said. But I've always loved that like underbelly of it too. Again, it looks like, especially in Return of Samus, it looks so alien because it has those like big, like the flattened mushroom kind of sides and this big like black and like dark gray underbelly that's has a bunch of like doodads and mechanical things and metal rods and cannon things sticking out of it. Yeah, this is. I think the Super Metroid version obviously is really cool because then you get to see more of that contrast. But it, again, when you look at it, it looks so alien, I think, compared to all of our other ships, and it's no surprise that it has that like iconic, I guess, aura to it, and it's been in so many other media. It's the most like probably the most iconic ship in from Metroid.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, we've talked. Yeah, we've talked about this before, but like, Metroid 2 sprite work like throughout the whole game is absolutely phenomenal. And like a huge reason behind that is because, it released colorless. And so it had to rely on very eye-catching designs. It needed like recognizable silhouettes from a distance. And so I think that's why, everything, including that gunship, stands out so prominently. And then once you do get to Super Metroid and you do get that upgrade to 16-bit graphics and, richer colors, it just adds that much more detail into an already detail packed design, right from the get-go. And it's actually going to Super Metroid. The thing that actually stands out to me about that is the sound design of the gunship. I love the cutscenes where it's flying to and from the camera and you hear that that's the sound that I think of when I think of the Super Metroid gunship.
There's a really, really awesome Super Metroid ROM hack called Super Duper Metroid. And the beginning of that game actually has you do like a little Star Fox level almost with the gunship, which is really, really cool and really, really fun. Man, it makes you wish that something like that existed in Super Metroid or some other kind of 2D Metroid, but because that would just be an absolute blast. Going back to what you said, Dak, I feel like the Super Metroid gunship for me looks, and this is going to sound weird, but it's almost my favorite because it looks the least like a gunship you would expect it to look, because it's kind of round.
It looks like a UFO. It looks
exactly.
like it should be spinning almost, right?
Yeah. And the rest of them look great. But they look like what I would think a gunship would look like. Where this one just has that UFO kind of vibe to it. That's exactly what I'd say. And I really love it for that. Like it just, I don't know. It just looks so charming, but also functional, but also just very appropriate for the series and for Samus.
I 100% agree. I think, and I feel like too, it comes from like, I guess the initial intent of the ship was, it's like a gunship, but it's like a starship, right? Like it's not necessarily meant to be like outwardly this like combat focused entirely ship. Like it's, Samus uses it to move around and scout and all that stuff too, and have it be maneuverable and whatnot. And I feel like that UFO like shape plays to that, right? Whereas like in Corruption, it's very much like it's combat focused, it's strike focused, it's very move from point A, point B, point C focus. So like that kind of narrow, like fleshed forward type of ship makes a lot more sense, I think, thematically than. I mean, even then, like we saw, Metroid Prime 2 brought it back. But yeah, I love this design, and it definitely feels like classic Metroid. Obviously, it's from the earlier ones, but it does have that like kind of like retro future look to it, where it doesn't look like it has like the utility of what we'd think of like an actual futuristic ship, right? It's like it literally shaped like the top of her helmet, which is always very funny and a continued theme for pretty much all of her ships. But this one it's very much like this wouldn't be like this doesn't seem like something that necessarily be made by like a futuristic civilization, but in the story it is. But it's very retro future for us in terms of our interpretation of it by playing the game.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Let's keep going here, and maybe let's stick with 2D Metroid here for a second, because and we're not done talking about the Super Metroid version of the gunship, but as we all know, unfortunately, that gunship is destroyed after Samus is infected by X-parasites on SR-388. She goes to try and track down the team that went there and finds that they are unfortunately no more. She gets infected, leaves the planet, and that infection, the X takes her over, and she basically ends up crash landing. The ship is destroyed. Samus barely survives. We all know the story. She has to get the fusion suit put on. But that also means that, at least for the first time in 2D Metroid, well, that's actually technically not true, actually, I guess. For the first time in 2D Metroid since Zero Mission, we have a new gunship. And we'll talk about Fusion, then we'll go back to Zero Mission after we're done. What do you guys think of the Starship for Metroid Fusion and Metroid Dread, because it's the same one?
Yeah, so I love the depiction of it in Metroid Fusion. The sprite work for it. I love that it's like that like Halo Covenant purple that those ships have. Like it just like that perfect shade of it, like it's almost identical, and then it has that like lighter blue front kind of winch or glass or whatever. And again, you can see all the like inner workings at the bottom. You can see like the legs and like all the different wiring and the different pistons that for the landing gear. I think the Metroid Fusion of it, that depiction is awesome. I love how it looks in Fusion. In Metroid Dread, I don't know what they did to this ship. The downgrade, man, super downgraded. It feels like they squished it. Like it's a lot. It looks like in Fusion, it's kind of looks like the ship's like looming over you a little bit, and it has this like arch to it, and it has like more of like this like insect kind of like structure to the face, like to the front of it almost. And then you look at it in Dread, and it's like elongated and flat, and I guess that's what it's supposed to look like in 3D, but I don't know. I'm honestly not a big fan of what they did to my precious Fusion ship going into Dread. It's also like a dark blue almost. It's not like the same purple. It's like it doesn't I don't know. It just doesn't pop like that ship.
You can still see it's purple, but you're right. It doesn't have that same like.
It's like a dark purple.
Luminescence.
It's like a blueberry almost. Than like this more violet purple that I really love from the other ship. It also just has like kind of a different. It has that like half halo like bottom for the Fusion version. I don't think that's really kind of carried over in the Dread version. I don't know. I am not a big fan of how it looks in Dread. I think that evolution was a big downgrade. I love how it looks in Fusion though. It's like one of my favorite designs. And the purple, and obviously for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's like the two-legged ship, right? The long nose, purple. I'm trying to describe this because I know sometimes we talk about things on the show and like people don't have the sound or like the visual reference in front of them, but that like it's so much different than the ship we were just talking about, which is obviously like very UFO, and this is very like bipedally, like
it looks
has
like a
legs,
spider or something like almost.
Yeah,
like
it's very insect-like.
Yeah, it's got those things underneath, and the visor is very much like it doesn't bend the same way as the other ship did. It's more of a standard V. But the visor, the sprite work for the visor actually looks fantastic. I think in Metroid Fusion it looks very creepy. It looks very the whole thing. It almost looks like the underside of the box robot that you fight. Actually, it looks really, really cool.
It's like a compound eye, almost a little
sort
bit,
of, yeah,
like a bug's eye. It looks cool.
I've got some thoughts on the Dread ship, but Doom, what do you think about this Fusion Starship?
I'm mostly in agreement on both versions. One thing I especially love about the fusion ship is the animation work done. You know, you guys were talking about how it looks like a spider. I love how it transitions from its flight to, its landing gear, and how you can like actually see like the hind legs like animating too. You didn't really get that in Dread, I think. I think it's just kind of like a standard like little pegs that come out, and so it's not it's not as fun to look at. I really like things that's moving. I like lots of details and moving parts, and Fusion just has so many little cool stuff like that, which it's not really as big of a focus in Dread, since you don't really visit until the end of the game. But still, I like that little bit of extra effort put into it. And I also really like that kind of pattern that's on the on the windscreen of the ship. You kind of see that also in Samus's modern suits, starting from Prime Remastered and again in Prime 4, where you see like these kind of etched patterns into the lighting and the helmet design. You see that in the Fusion ship as well, but you don't really get that in the Dread ship either. It's it doesn't quite have that same level of detail as the sprite work in a 20-year-old game does.
Which is like kind of too bad, because like the ship itself looks good in Metroid Dread. Like it looks sleek. It looks
I don't hate it at all.
It's kind of one of those. Well, like
Sorry.
when I say it looks good, how do I like it? Like it looks like technically it looks good. It doesn't have a lot of heart, I guess maybe is how I would categorize it if we want to do that. And the other thing about the ship in Metroid Dread is that you really don't see it like for the entire game. Like you see it in the opening intro, and it looks really cool. Like that opening animation where like Samus kind of zooms in and takes off, and the sound effect where it's like poof, where she's punching it looks really, really spectacular. But that's pretty much it. Like you really don't see it until the end of the game. Once you see Quiet Robe in there, who has been infected by the X. So.
It feels like it just like it. Yeah, I guess you were getting at it. It doesn't. It feels like it doesn't have as much character.
It doesn't
personality as the previous version of it. And I think that goes back to like what Doom was saying. It feels a little more stiff. It doesn't have that like kind of flex and movement to it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Andy, to your point, it is very much more of like integral to the Fusion story. Like it's something you go back to in gameplay. It's something you go by often, right? Like it kind of plays into the story a bit more. Whereas in Dread, yeah, obviously it's not as integral in the story. It's pretty much you show up and you go on the planet and then you leave on the ship. It's pretty much just there literally to be a ship, and it could be any ship at that point. So I think those elements also kind of play into it.
One other thing I forgot to mention, and it seems like it's small detail, and it really is, but just something that I like to point out. So the previous ship, Samus enters from the top. This is the first time we see Samus enter the ship from the bottom. And again,
that's right.
And again in Dread, kind of going to the point about the landing gear, in Dread, it's just kind of a regular platform that descends in the ship. Whereas in Fusion, it's got like this little like warp beam almost that like warps her into the ship, which I think looks so cool. And I wish that was in Dread too. I want to see what that would look like in 3D.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, it's worth pointing out that in terms of the Metroid story here, this ship is provided by the Galactic Federation, who, as we, of course, get to know a little bit more during the course of the game, find that they might have some ulterior motives. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the ship is also integrated with the Atom AI, which, again, as we know, ends up actually working in Samus' favor because the AI kind of rebels against his programming, but I believe the intent, if all things are equal, was that this ship would be more controlled by the Galactic Federation with that AI looking over everything, which is also kind of like a cool little touch, I think, too.
Yeah, I always kind of got the feeling that like the ship in Fusion and Dread was almost kind of acted as like Adam's body in a way, a little bit.
Kind of.
Whereas like the previous ships, like they have like computers in them, but those are very clearly like essentially Siri, right? They're just a voice like that you can get answers from, and it logs things, right? It's not like actually controlling the ship entirely. Like Samus is, I mean, it has some like autopilot features, but you wouldn't say that it's like, a Ghost in the Shell type situation, which is kind of what Adam, I feel like, is to the Fusion and Dread ships.
I've always wondered, like, this is probably like a stupid detail nobody cares about. I would love to know how the Etecoons and the Decors at the end of Metroid Fusion were able to get the ship off the ground. I really do wonder that. I don't know if like Adam basically had everything ready to go, and kind of like where we saw in Alien Romulus, and this is, I guess, a out of context slight spoiler, so skip ahead 30 seconds, but there was a sequence where there was a ship that was on autopilot, and all that was needed is for someone to press a button to allow the AI to kind of take over that ship. I wonder if that's maybe the same kind of gimmick or something like that. And I'd be totally fine with that explanation, by the way. It's always one of those like little loose ends that I've always really been curious about.
I just kind of always interpreted it as, I mean, hey, we see the animals like literally teaching Samus how to wall jump and shine spark. Sure, why not let him pilot a ship too? Like, does it make sense? Probably not, but I'm willing to like let that one slide. But I actually like that explanation of like, hey, you know what? You have to press this button, but someone needs to be there to physically press the button to let the AI do the override. I actually dig that.
That was my interpretation of it, that
Mine
they weren't
too.
like literally piloting the ship, but they did something that essentially allowed Adam to do the rest, and they were like, oh, I had a little bit of help, like I couldn't get it done without them, which was like both true and also like, I think, being a little bit tongue-in-cheek, right, and not literally implying that these animals hopped on the joystick, and which I'm also okay with at this point. I'm, in terms of loose ends, I just want to know what happened to them, because they don't appear in Dread at all. And, you know, I forget about the whole Federation story not being followed up on. What happened to the animals at the end of Fusion? The fact
Asking
that they
the
don't
real
even,
questions.
the fact that they don't even like a little Easter egg or nothing, like nothing at all, like not even a single line about it or a mention. I'm like, why? I don't know. I feel like that connective tissue between games is, even on that level, is important for Metroid, and it's also more fun and entertaining. And it's like, don't make me invested in these. I know Mercury Steam didn't make Fusion, but like, don't make me invested in these characters and then take them away from me.
Hey man,
I'm telling you, easy way to solve that. And still on the topic of gunships, ironically enough, but you know, Samus Returns, the main menu takes place inside Samus's gunship, which honestly we could probably talk about later too. But you know, when you beat the game, you know, you get the baby Metroid in there. I was always saying, hey, you know what, Metroid Dread's menu should have been in there, and you should have seen the Edakuns and Decoras like, you know, scurrying about in there. That would have been so awesome.
oh, that would have been
enough.
fantastic. Hey man, maybe we'll get Metroid Other M2 that takes place between Fusion and Dread and get the answers to those questions. I'm making the executive decision. We're just going to do 2D Metroid, and then we're going to do the Metroid Prime series here. And I'm doing them in order of how the games were released, but maybe that wasn't the best way. So
You're all over the place.
I'm all over the dang place here. So let's go all the way back to the very, very, very beginning. Let's go to Metroid Zero Mission. Of course, this is a new version of Samus's gunship that, unless I'm mistaken, we don't see this version of the gunship in any other game, which I'm actually okay with, because it's not my favorite version of the gunship, I have to admit. Every time I look at it, it kind of reminds me of that one enemy that you fight in Metroid 2 that's designed to look like Samus's gunship. And I don't know. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look bad at all. But it's not my favorite. It's kind of, when I look at it, it's kind of like, it's got some aspects that I like from the Super Ship and the Fusion Ship, but it's also worse than both of them. It's kind of like it has similar aspects, but that makes me think of how much better those other two ships are in terms of the design.
Well,
I wasn't upset to see this one destroyed at the end of Zero Mission.
Well, let's describe this one real quick again for our listeners who might not visualize it real quick. So yeah, this ship is like completely different than all the other ones, because I think it's the only one besides like the Corruption and 4 ship that has like wings, right? So it's like it's the flattened, like, as the two. It's, first of all, it's very red, very red. The visor, like the front like lookout, is like just kind of like this thin, wide green piece. And then you have like these two wings, and it's kind of flattened out. It has like this like flattened like head, almost like back portion. It's very sleek. It's very much more like a starship than a gunship, right? It very much looks more like, and I think it's even referred to as like her personal ship that like she was using to travel with, and for whatever reason didn't have a gunship to begin with. I don't even think there are weapons on it, or she uses any weapons on it, but it's probably the biggest departure in terms of the other ships. It has wings, but it's not very much like the wings like the Corruption ship. The wings are like angled backwards and more like swooping to the back, as opposed to the Corruption ship, which has the wings that are like pointed forward and more like I don't know, again, insecty. I'm trying to think of like the word for it. So it's very, very much a different ship. I always like this one because it does have that like early storyness to it. Like it's a more basic ship. Like it's Samus's first mission. It's not. It doesn't have as nearly as much going on. It doesn't like nearly as much look like. It does look like Samus, obviously resemblance, but it's not as much as like egregious as the other ships, which literally look like her helmet. Um, I always thought this ship was cool because it gives the suggestion of like speed and nimbleness, right? Which I would say is probably the thing that Samus's ships don't have across the board. Like they don't look like ships that are going to quickly zoom around and be nimble and agile. And this ship very much does feel like that. And then it does get shot down, but like even those cutscenes where like it's flying away from, you know, the space pirate vessels, right? It carries that speed and it looks like it has that speed to it. So that's what I always liked about it. But I think it's cool that it's only in Zero Mission and then you gotta go from there. It's not a design that like I would say needs to come back or anything.
I agree.
Yeah, this is probably my least favorite design of the ship, but I still really enjoy the design, and actually it does appear in the Samus Returns flashback as well, so we do get a very slight cameo appearance of that in the future too. But the sprite work, I actually really love the sprite work of the ship. When it's landed, I like the outline and the colors and how everything is distributed. It's it's in the cutscenes and when we see the full 3D model where I'm not quite as big of a fan of it. But that landing pose when it's just taking over the centers, that center of Crateria, I think it looks fantastic there.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's not a bad ship, and you're right. It definitely does give the impression of speed, more so than any other ship, but.
It's probably the most aerodynamic ship she has.
Probably.
Realistically.
Which is ironic because that's the only ship that I can think of that gets destroyed.
It gets chased down and destroyed.
Which, rest in peace. But, one thing that I did think actually was kind of cool, you guys probably remember this, in the build-up to Metroid Dread, Nintendo was releasing all of that, like the history of Metroid, stuff like that. And they did take this ship and make a Nestroid version of it. And I'm using that kind of loosely because the sprite work is very, very... It's not a very detailed sprite work, but it is, it does show up in an 8-bit kind of presentation. It looks kind of cool. Makes you think about what could have been if that would have been in Nestroid. But yeah, I don't know. This one, I think it may be just the red, to be honest. It's too on the nose how it's supposed to look like Samus's helmet to me. That might just be it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Well, this ship was not long for this world. Maybe really quickly, since we're here, and I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about it afterwards, but I maybe let's take a second and talk about the escape pod. So the actual ship that Samus uses to get off the planet Zebes when she's in Chozodia, fights the Ridley robot. I always thought that it was actually a pretty cool looking ship with that really kind of weird looking tail that comes with the ship, which is a hallmark of the Space Pirates. I quite like that design that we saw in Zero Mission, almost better than Samus's gunship, to be honest.
Yeah, I love the Space Pirate escape pods in Zero Mission. I love how kind of organic they feel. You were just mentioning those kind of biomechanical tails that they have. Like I think it looks rad. I like the front of the hood as well. Kind of making another Halo reference. It looks like. What I think it's called the OVA armor deck. Remind me, the one I'm talking about, the one where it kind of looks like a bald helmet.
Well, like the EVA
or the EVA. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. You know what I mean? It kind of looks like that helmet style. So I really like that. And we were talking about this during the Prime 4 trailer, but there's those space pirate ships that fly overhead that they don't look exactly like it, but they share a lot of the same design cues with that kind of organic and round looking body.
I was about to say, the escape pod is essentially those ships that the pirates are using to chase Samus down Zero Mission, and then they seem to appear in Metroid Prime 4, but I forgot that the escape pod that Samus uses is essentially that same design. And yeah, I love the tail that is, I don't really get the functionality for it, but I think that's super interesting that they show up again in Metroid Prime 4 for some reason, because I'm pretty sure we don't see that type of ship at all in the Prime series up until that point. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see what's going on in that scene in that trailer, because I saw those ships. I was like, oh, I think I even did a post about it on Twitter a few months ago, where I was like, well, I think this is the first time that we've seen that type of ship in the Prime games in 3D. So I don't know. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's finish off the 2D games here. We don't have much else to talk about other than just I just wanted to go back to the Super Metroid ship, which of course shows up in Samus Returns. You don't see a ton of it. You see the outside of it, and you have the awesome battle with Ridley actually, with the ship kind of somewhat in the background there. But I think that Doom, you pointed this out. The coolest portion of the ship is that you actually get to see the inside of it, and the inside looks really really cool. And one of my favorite scenes is just Samus and the baby Metroid sitting there with, just enjoying each other's company. And you know what? Let me take a quick sidebar here. So the original last week, before I had to drop out at the last minute, we were going to talk about the greatest moments in the Metroid series. I was going to tell you guys, I think the greatest moment in the Metroid series might be Samus sparing that little baby Metroid. I was thinking long and hard about it. I think that might be my favorite.
It's a good pick.
Yeah, so we had different interpretations of that question, right? Because we talked about
tough,
like our favorite feeling playing Metroid, and not necessarily our favorite moment, literally like in the story or like in that sense.
There's almost too many for your favorite feeling, because it's like the first time you enter anywhere, it's like, wow.
Well, I think that's what Doom said.
Yeah. Yeah. So not a lot going on in Samus Returns, but it really did make me wish that hopefully we're going to see more of the inside of the gunship as well. Like I think we've talked about potentially having like almost like a little base or something like that inside, and it doesn't have to be huge, but I would love that.
We're going to talk about these ships in a bit, but like obviously in Prime 3 you're in the cockpit right there and in Samus's seat. I always loved that. I remember playing Prime 3, and I mean I was someone who loved the bobbleheads and the achievements and the credits you could get, so like I loved going around and booping on all the buttons, and like you could, you put in different codes, you'll get different messages on the radio, and you can, open like the shields on the front and all that, and like change like how like that all. I loved all that kind of stuff. So I really hope we go back to that in Prime 4. But to your point, I do think it would be really cool to kind of give Samus like a little like home base and have that be her ship. Like what's behind the seat, like what's behind the chair, what is like, where's Samus like going and like taking a nap, and like her armory is there, like, and her stuff, maybe the animals are chilling, like she has a little aquarium or something, I don't know. Like I think that would be cool and would make sense instead of her having like a physical base that's stationary. Like that doesn't seem like Samus's vibe. Like she lives on her ship. I want to see the rest of the ship, so I 100% agree. I hope we do.
Yeah, Samus is 100% an RV mom, obviously.
There you go.
Van life.
Yes.
Should deck it out. Get a few stickers to put on. You can put some stickers on.
I want to be able to put some bumper stickers on the ship in Prime 4.
A couple, that was a proud thing in Metroid Prime 3, so hopefully that comes back. And let's just get over to the Prime series now and talk about the gunship from Metroid Prime, which actually, somewhat amazingly, I might even suggest to you guys is like the third most recognizable, maybe second, but I don't know. I third most maybe is what I might say. But still just a spectacular looking ship. Really kind of blends like the Super Metroid with some of the, I guess, the designs that we would see in the later versions of the Prime ships. I think it looks really cool. It's a really nice modernizing of the classic Starship.
I would even say it's the second most recognizable, actually. I think after the iconic ship from Samus Returns and Super and Prime 2, this is the one that most people would recognize because it's from Metroid Prime. And it's also pretty much only from Metroid Prime. Like it shows up in Pinball and Hunters, but like in terms of the main games, like it's only in Metroid Prime. And it's obviously part of like the iconic opening of the game. So like I feel like when you think of that, you think of the ship, and you think of Samus showing up to the frigate, the rockets like moving in different directions to like change the trajectory and angle of her hover and whatnot, and do the landing sequence. And I always love that. It's hard because it's such a different, like it has a mixture and also different elements that aren't in the other ships, but it is a mixture of like that Super Metroid ship and almost kind of its own thing. It's hard to rank these ships because I pretty much love all of them, but this one to me, just like I love the different rocket boosters and that movement. You really don't have that in any of the other ships. That amount of like kind of versatility on the bottom part, but otherwise it's pretty It's almost like it's weird because like things stick out of it. It's like almost like drone looking. It's not as like bulbous and round and wide. It's a bit more narrower. It's a bit more sleek, but it's still very clearly Samus's helmet. It has like that bottom area and it has the bumpers, but they're like more like legs rather. Yeah, this is iconic for me. I think that the classic ship is probably still, I don't know if I prefer that, but I think that's still a better design than this one. But this is like, yeah, this is, I mean, this is pure Metroid Prime because it's pretty much only from that. But I always love like the movement and the mechanics of this ship, and it's probably unmatched from the other designs.
Mm-hmm.
I heard someone describe this design as, looking like a beetle almost, and ever since then, I can't unsee that from my mind. And I feel like that's
I
kind
can
of
see
why I
it.
love this, and that's kind of why I love this design so much because we talked about how this the Super Metroid and Onward design has this alien feel, but this one goes in a different direction. It's very animalistic almost, still very clearly like you know a machine, but like it has like these animalistic traits to it, and I kind of like it. I kind of dig it. I love, I kind of like, the sleek almost, pill design as it narrows its way into the back. I like all the cannons that stick out. Dak, you were talking about the landing gear. I love, again, I love moving parts, and so I love, kind of like,
The little
this almost
legs.
the gyro motion of like, the legs as opposed to like the static motion. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, I think like all the little antennas and stuff like that sticking out everywhere just make it look really, really slick, really cool. It's kind of like a nice blend of classic, but almost with a little bit of zero mission ship involved in it as well. And it's certainly, I think, for me and probably for a lot of us, maybe other than the Criterion landing, has definitely the most kind of iconic landing on a planet when it touches ground on Talon 4. Like that, talk about great Metroid moments. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, and most importantly of all, Gunship multi-ball, baby.
There you go.
Pinball.
So remind me, Dak, is this, was it Metroid Prime 1 or Metroid Prime 2 where the idea was to have a gunship fight with Ridley in like a canyon?
That's Metroid Prime 1. I don't
think
know
it
if it
was
was a
one.
gunship.
Yeah.
It was Metroid Prime 1, and from what I remember, it wasn't a gunship fight. It was Samus on top of her ship
You're right.
fighting off Ridley, who's there as the ship autopilot flies through the canyon. I don't think it was necessary. I mean, that's a great idea. I would love if you remember from Halo Reach, like the long Night of Solace, that mission. If it was like just a pure gunship like sequence and you're fighting off Ridley who's flying around and you get like an Ace Combat type scenario, like
Oh,
I would love that. That would be sick.
that'd be so good. And I really, really hope that they realize that idea now. And like I got my fingers crossed for Metroid Prime 4 or maybe 5, I don't know, but like it seems like it just seems like such a cool idea to let it go to waste like that. So I really, really hope that we get something like that. You know what? Really quickly, talking about Metroid Prime Hunters for a second, a little bit unique, and obviously it kind of speaks to the kind of game that Metroid Prime Hunters is. But the Gunship, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the only place where you can really read all the lore, read all the messaging, and everything that you find throughout the course of your adventure there. Kind of a neat little. It adds a little bit to your safe haven, so to speak, for the ship.
Yeah, it's so the idea of it is really interesting. So Hunters takes place between Prime 1 and 2, and so the devs, they wanted to visually demonstrate that by using the gunship from Prime 1, but the various redesign from Prime 2 to kind of show that transition period. And so I thought that was a really interesting kind of art design choice.
But then they don't explain why Samus then has a new ship
Yeah.
in Prime 2, right? Because if we're talking about the history of and the evolution of these ships, in Prime 2 we get the classic Samus ship chronologically for the first time. And it's my understanding that that's like a ship that was built by the Federation, but they don't really explain why Samus just suddenly has this different ship. And from the Prime 1 one, which as far as we know worked fine. I mean, maybe it was just like, I don't want to deal with controlling all those legs, those rocket boosters. But
Maybe.
we know in Prime 3 when she has that different gunship, it's because she's specifically designs it apparently, and it's part of that. So that makes sense to me. But like, Samus just shows up with a different ship, and then that ends up being chronologically the iconic ship that she uses in Prime 2, then doesn't use in Prime 3 and Prime 4 apparently, and then goes back and uses it multiple times before it ends up being destroyed. So I mean that's probably not an answer we need, but it would be interesting, like even if it was just like, oh, like this ship, like maybe this new design was an upgrade or whatever, we thought this would be better, blah blah blah, just like as a one-off. But yeah, I don't think it's really mentioned why the Metroid Prime one ship just gets replaced by the iconic ship that eventually shows up later. I would have to imagine, I guess it was just a tech upgrade and it's a better performing ship, but I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. They don't specifically mention it, but I guess I got this idea in my head of like Samus having a garage on some planet or something like that, and she's got like a couple ships, which sounds like I'm being facetious, but like actually I think that'd be awesome to like have a little, you know, bat cave, so to speak, where Samus has all her different ships, all her like some stuff like that. That would be really cool. Maybe if instead of the ship being the base, you could just go to like a literal actual base. That'd be sweet.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like having Samus have a specific static location doesn't really play to her character, you know? Like, she's always on the move, like, always on missions. Like, the ship is her place. Like, I don't see Samus having, like, a garage of all these ships. Like, that... I feel like she uses a ship, the Federation's like, here's a better one, use this one, and we're gonna take that old one that you're using. So that's probably what happened, is she went on her mission to Metroid Prime. Federation's like, hey, we built this new ship on, what is it, Alias 3 or whatever it is, right? In the logbook. And they're like, we have this better ship for you. It has all these cool things that the previous one didn't have, and it's newer and it's better. You're going to fly in this one now. And she's like, okay, cool. Like, I just did a couple. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure after a couple missions, they probably do like, all right, let's get you in something new, you know? And that's what I figure happened.
Well, it's a fine theory, but that doesn't explain, let's just move on, why the classic gunship is back for Metroid Prime 2, but then is not for Metroid Prime 3, and then shows up later. But man, oh man, oh man, I love seeing this gunship in Prime 2. My goodness.
Yeah,
I'm glad. Cool. Like on one hand, we'll talk about the Prime 3 design later, which, spoilers, is like bar none my favorite design, but I am so happy that we got to see a Prime version of, you know, the Hood Classic, you know, the GOAT. And God, Retro did such a fantastic job translating this into 3D. Even going back, even going back and, you know, replaying this again recently. My God, it's for a 2004 game, a nearly 2-decade-old game. There is so much detail packed into this thing. Not just the circuitry and like even the landing gear. You know, it has like, you know, this little kind of cushion effect like as it lands. It's not static. There's like very subtle micro movements there. You know, you have like the Chozo writing on the side,
man,
and you know the lore
good.
and the. Huh? There's no Chozo writing?
No, there is. It just looks awesome. Like they actually, you can see the specific writing, and just what a great attention to detail that is, man.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I think the best transition for the ship coming from 2D to 3D is you're talking about like the landing pads, and you can see like the red like interior of it as they expand and then like compress, and that I love. But also I think it really even conveys the UFO-ness of the ship a bit more, because the bottom of the ship is like pretty flat looking in Prime 2. So it looks it's just like the top is curved and the bottom's flat, aside from those landing pads. It carries over that alienness while still very clearly having like that functionality, like the Federation built it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think it looks so cool in Prime 2.
I think the landing site in Prime 2 as well is like one of my favorite landing sites, because it's got all that creepy red moss stuff that's growing everywhere, and like all these big statues, and it's just a very creepy setting. So it looks really great for the ambiance of that kind of alien ship. So it really was awesome seeing this in full 3D. That Chozo text is so good, and you get to see the inside a little bit.
You know, I'm gonna say now, just looking at both of them, I think I prefer the Metroid Prime 1 ship more in 3D than this one, and I think it has to do with the landing gear, because I don't know, it just like, I do love those big like bumper pads, but there's something about like the more nimble and like rocket arms, especially when it's hovering in place and they all come to a point and they're all like, it's just boosting like or just like blasting the ground in one particular point because the legs all configured. Like looking at it, it feels like again it has more dynamicism to it. It feels like it's a lot more dynamic. It feels like it has more character to it. So I'm actually gonna say I think I actually like the Metroid Prime 1 version better, but I can see how they might have been like, oh, the Metroid Prime, this new version's a maybe an upgrade because though if those rocket things get like broken, you're screwed. Whereas those big pads look a lot more like I don't know. There's a little more consistency and stability to them. They don't look like they're gonna get snapped off or anything. So maybe that's where the upgrade came from.
I mean, we literally see Samus crash land the ship, and it's able to take
And it's
that,
fine.
durable. Yeah.
That's true. It is very durable. So that's a good
That's
point.
an homage to the classic Game Boy when the ship first came on, because that thing was literally indestructible. I remember dropping that on concrete multiple times as a kid. Worked fine. Yeah, no, the fantastic looking gunship, and actually we're not done talking about this gunship because there's a few other appearances that we'll get to, but let's go to the one that everybody I think wants us to start talking about here, and that is of course the gunship from Metroid Prime 3. I was gonna say I think maybe arguably the second most after the Prime 2 Super Metroid gunship, iconic version of the gunship, debatable with Metroid Prime, but certainly certainly a very slick and the most gunship. It looks like a weapon more so than anything else, which is appropriate because you actually use this as a weapon in the game for the first time ever, which we've talked about before. So I mean, we don't have to spend a ton of time talking about how it functions in the game, other than to say it's absolutely. I love that idea. I hope it comes back. I hope it's just kind of a series staple rather than a gimmick that the game introduces with a visor. I hope that you can just command your ship to do stuff, but I really enjoyed that. I think that the design looks really sleek. I can't say that I like it more than the Super Metroid one, just because it looks so that one just looks like a UFO. This one just looks like an actual ship that's about to mess you up.
This looks like an actual gunship.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an actual gunship. It doesn't have wings swooped back. It has arms that are pointed forward. It's very much for direct engagement, which makes sense because in the first even if we're just sticking to the Prime games, in Metroid Prime 1 and 2, Samus is taking mission. She's scouting, or she kind of takes a mission that she's doing scouting for, right? Doesn't really know what's about to happen. Whereas this one in Metroid Prime 3, she knows very directly what she's getting into. And I feel like knowing that there's a huge engagement, because I know from the logbook it says that Samus designed this ship. I don't know when she took the time to do this, when she had the time to work on designing this ship, but very clearly there's intent behind it. And I like that addition of it is okay, it's not just a ship built with Federation tech, is built with Federation and Chozo tech because it works with their ship more, concretely. But it's all, and I think that's where probably Samus's design input, I guess, comes from. I'm trying to imagine Samus around a boardroom, looking at concept images of and going through the factory.
Yeah, I think it just looks it just looks so cool. It looks very sleek too, very aerodynamic, kind of like the Zero Mission ship, but it definitely looks like it's ready to attack. My only critique of the ship, which isn't a critique of the ship itself, more of the game design, I guess, but you collect all of those missile ship expansions in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, but you don't really get a chance to use them very often. You use them very sparingly, and honestly speaking, you only ever need them one at a time because of how sparingly you use them, so they're kind of expansion for expansion's sake in the game. Like I said, I hope that gimmick comes back and that it's not a gimmick, it's just a standard part of Metroid going forward, or Metroid Prime at least. I think that would be really, really cool and just a really good building block. And the other thing that I love about this ship too, in Metroid Prime 3, is just how Gore is tossing it around and throwing it everywhere right before your fight. I always loved that because Samus's ship always just seemed like the sanctuary, untouchable, and you've got this big friendly robot who's not friendly anymore, just completely, making circuitry of it, which I thought was fantastic. So it almost felt he can do that. No one's ever done that before. I remember very vividly seeing that ship get tossed and feeling oh my god.
Yeah. The thing I like about this ship too, and it kind of harkens back a bit to the Metroid Prime 1 ship with the boosters that are maneuverable. The arms are the wings, the legs, right, of this ship. kind of rotate, right? So when it lands, like those wings kind of come down diagonally and are pointed down, but when she's flying, they come back up and she's like much more aerodynamic. I love that design of the ship. Also, uh the front, like I guess just the front visor of it is a lot more like sleek, and I kind of like goes a lot farther back on the ship. It's not just right at the front. Yeah, there's it's so much more purposeful, and it feels, I think it fits the game so much, right? Like I don't think this like ship would have had the same impact if like it was the Metroid Prime 1 ship at the time. And vice versa. I think that Metroid Prime ship like didn't feel like it was right for the job if it was in Metroid Prime 3. Um Also, what I like about this ship, though, apparently they changed this in Metroid Prime 4, but in Corruption, obviously, a lot of the time in the previous games, like Samus comes out from the top of the ship. In Corruption, she comes out from the bottom. I think she might also come out from the top at some points. I might be wrong, but I know she comes out of the ship from the bottom of it. Like she has that like drop elevator thing she steps out from. But then in Metroid Prime 4, she comes out from the top again. And like it's a classic, like her usual classic ship. So I wonder if that's another one of the upgrades. She's like, maybe it's safer for me to come out from the top of the ship and not at the bottom. I don't know. I thought that was interesting. I'm curious what's up with that.
Yeah.
So I'll get into that, but first, one thing I actually did want to talk about the Prime 2 ship first actually is previously when we see the that iteration of the ship, it's yellow to match, the power suit that Samus starts off. But in Prime 2 it's orange, not just because, the Metroid Prime ships are typically orange, but also because Samus starts the game in the various suit of that game. So I thought that was also an interesting detail as well. And I think I like that style ship more in orange as opposed to yellow, but I like both iterations regardless. But back to the ship at hand. So yeah, the Prime 4 trailer is the first time we see Samus rise from the top out of that ship. But we also do see during the landing sequence, it still does have that bottom landing hatch as well. And so my theory is because in Prime 3, Samus physically lands the ship, but in Prime 4, it just hovers for a bit before flying back off on autopilot. So my guess is that's like that top hatch is more like an emergency hatch, if you will.
Yeah, it's more of like a quick escape kind of thing. Whereas if she's really gonna park it, she's gonna come out from the bottom. So I mean that's cool. I'm down with that.
Well, you touched on it earlier, Dak, but I think it's worth repeating here. One of the really cool things about this ship, obviously beyond its design, beyond its functionality, is that you get to spend a little bit more time in it. You can sit inside, you can fiddle around with the radio and put the little Chozo codes or whatever they happen to be. I remember when this game first came out, spending like an hour just sitting in. I had all the shutters closed. I had the orange auxiliary light on. I just kind of felt like I was in my own little bubble. And it was really cool. It was just kind of like a cool, personalized feeling to see. It made me feel, I don't know, like a little bit more like I was an actual like bounty hunter in my bounty hunting ship or something like that. It was a little detailed, but I feel like it really went a long way. And I know that some people are like, oh, the me bobbleheads are stupid, but I thought it was like a fun little quirk.
Bring the bobbleheads back.
I think they will. Back. I think that I bet you they come back in some form in Metroid Prime 4. I really do.
It's the one chibi art style I think Metroid fans would actually celebrate.
You know what? Since you said that, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I do have to say, I actually don't think that this ship looks terrible in Metroid Prime Federation Force. It actually looks pretty cool. Now, does it look as cool as Prime 3? No, but pretty cool nonetheless.
I actually wanted to mention that. Like, this ship looks so awesome that even the Federation Force art style cannot bring it down like that. It's pretty remarkable.
Now, what does bring it down is that your little Federation Marine is like the mech is literally gripping onto the ship as it moves forward, which is just a horrific ending, as we talked about on Mapping Metroid. But yeah, that the ship itself actually I think looks pretty okay in terms of its design in Federation Force. But I really did just like absolutely love being able to sit inside of the ship, just tinker around with all the different stuff, the codes and everything like that. It was just like a really immersive experience, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and kind of reiterating my point again, this is easily my favorite design of like all the Metroid ships. To me, like The other ships are like hubs. This is like you guys were talking about. It's a weapon. It's compact. It doesn't have as much. It's not as much of a living space as the other ships are. This is like you are in there to do combat. This is the F-22 Raptor of Metroid ships, and I love it's very angular in its design structure, and it looks killer in Prime 3. It somehow looks killer in Federation Force, and it looks unbelievable in Metroid Prime 4 with, those shiny metallic highlights as well as the little, those red highlights they added to the helmet area too, which I don't think were present in the Prime 3 version.
I thought it looked really slick in Prime 4, the trailer, and that was one of the first things I noticed, was that it did have a more like silvery kind of metallic sheen to it, which almost gave me like Dreadsuit vibes a little bit, with like the white and the orange and stuff like that. That's actually the first thing I thought of when I saw that in the Prime 4 trailer. So I don't know. We'll see what happens to that ship. I mean, we know it doesn't make it to Return of Samus, maybe, or even Zero Mission for that matter. Or I guess Zero Mission takes place beforehand. Ignore me. Just Return of Samus. So maybe something happens to it during the course of the game, or Prime 5. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
Gore comes back and finishes the job.
Yeah, something must happen in Metroid Prime 4 or in those Prime games where she goes back to the previous ship that she has, technically, right? Because that ship would have, the iconic one shows up in Prime 2. So yeah, who knows? Or maybe because she's been using this ship during that time, they spend time developing the Prime 2 Samus Returns, Return of Samus ship, and by the time Return of Samus shows up, they're like, look, it's all nice and souped up for you. Come and jump right in. I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious to see how that, if it gets answered at all. Probably won't, but.
You know what game we didn't talk about that features the classic Samus starship from Super Metroid is, of course, Metroid Other M. And I'll be honest with you guys, I feel like I don't have any memories of her ship in Metroid Other M, which is not good, because I played the first 2 hours like a week ago, and I don't know, I just didn't remember anything really specific.
The bottle ship is the important ship in that game, man. There's no room for other ships unless it's the bottle ship from that game, as far as I'm concerned.
And what a ship the bottle ship is, by the way. That's a big ship.
I mean, it's just like a space station essentially. It's not really even a bottle ship. It's
like 16 space stations in one. This thing is ginormous.
Yeah.
I'm more interested, actually, let's, and we don't have to spend a ton of time talking about this, but I'm more interested in talking about some of the non-canonical appearances of the Gunship as well. And pretty much all of these are the Super Metroid version. I didn't know this, actually, but there is I'm sure, a quality Virtual Boy game called Galactic Pinball. And Doom, this probably is going to be right up your alley. And apparently this gunship shows up and makes a little cameo. So if you destroy all the bumpers in Bumper Clash, the player's ball turns into Samus's gunship. So how do you like that? I didn't know that. Did you guys?
Totally
I didn't know this at the moment, but I do remember hearing about that a while ago. I definitely should play this game sometime. I definitely want to experience some more.
I've never played a Virtual Boy game.
Me neither. But I'm curious. I've always been curious about checking it out. So maybe one of these days I'll do it.
I've had the opportunity to purchase a Virtual Boy, and I really thought about it, but it was like $500, and I was like, is the novelty worth it? I don't know. And I ended up passing.
I was on a video call with someone recently, and they had, a bunch of doodads in the back, and I saw a Virtual Boy. I was like, is that a Virtual Boy over there? And it was. I think I don't think I've ever seen one. I mean, I guess I have seen one in person, because I think they had one at Nintendo World or Nintendo New York at some point. Maybe they didn't. I know they had the war destroyed Game Boy there. I don't know how true that was, but that was there for a while. I don't know if that's there anymore. Man. But yeah, I've definitely never played a Virtual Boy with an actual Virtual Boy itself, and I would love to screw my eyes up with that.
I really would. I've heard that there's a really awesome Wario game for Virtual Boy.
Is that Wario's Woods? Is that what it is?
I can't remember off the top of my. I don't think so. I think it's like an actual Wario game. I could be mistaken. But
Virtual Boy. Yeah, it's a Wario Land game called Virtual Boy Wario Land.
Yeah, I've heard it's pretty good. Now, unfortunately, I think that's about the only pretty good game I've heard for the Virtual Boy.
Yeah, it's a Wario Land game. Can't really screw that up, I think. I mean, I guess you can, but hasn't been a good
I
one
think
in a
you can
while.
for sure. All right, well, let's talk about Super Smash Bros. Because this gunship has a rich history in the Super Smash Bros. Series as well. So first appearance, as far as I can see here, is obviously showing up in Melee. It's in the opening video. You can see it in the oh god, what is the F-Zero stage called? Big Blue?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that section. Yeah, you can see it in Melee with the Great Fox, and then
Yeah.
F-Zero's or Captain Falcon's Blue Falcon. I want to say there's another ship as well. I can't remember, but yeah, it's a brief little scene, but it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a cool little like blending of worlds, and it lasts for only like a second or two, but it looks really sweet. And of course you can get it as a trophy, and I don't know, I think the trophy definitely looks a little bit more orange than yellow, than maybe what we're used to, but and again is referred to as a starship rather than a gunship, which maybe is semantics, but I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool as well. But I think that the really big thing that I always remember about Samus' ship comes from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. That was the thing with this ship. Man, oh
Yeah, I
man,
mean that was a big
cool.
part of the subspace emissary, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's that one scene where they're fighting like Ganondorf and Bowser's like subspace like frigate ship, and like you have like Fox's ship flying and Samus's ship and Kirby
Oh,
on a star flying about. Like, yeah, that's iconic.
it was so awesome. Oh god, I'm drawing a complete blank. Dak, help me out. Where do you fight Meta Ridley in that game?
So, well, you fight Ridley and Meta Ridley in that game,
Yeah,
from
like
what I
I know you
remember.
fight
So you
you fight
fight
Meta Ridley on the Blue Falcon. Is that right?
yes,
Not the Blue Falcon, but it's Captain Falcon's the bigger ship, the one you start off on Big
yeah,
Blue.
the
I can't
big
remember what it's called. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, the Blue Falcon is like his actual race car. But
I see.
yeah. So his big ship, and that's the sequence where Samus and Pikachu are like breaking out of the Rob factory or something, and then they fight the animated Varia suit, I think, and then there's the fight on the ship against Ridley, which is an awesome boss battle.
Yeah,
hmm
yeah, one of the coolest in the game. But I just remember that cutscene, man. That ship looks so awesome. And going over to, I feel like this is the forgotten Smash game, Smash 4 or Smash for 3DS and Wii U. Very cool final Smash that was added for Zero Suit Samus, where basically the gunship comes and like, what happens? You get smacked up against it, and like the laser explodes or something like that, or am I thinking Ultimate?
You're thinking about Ultimate, so it is Samus's or Zero Suit Samus's final smash in Smash 4, because she has the big final laser, and that gets rid of Samus's power armor and gets Zero Suit Samus in. I'm pretty sure that using the final smash as Zero Suit Samus gets her back into the power suit, if I'm not mistaken, and the ship
so
shows up.
that's
I
only
think that's
Brawl
just in
because
Brawl.
That is
yeah,
Brawl. Okay.
because Samus and Zero Suit Samus were the same character in Brawl.
You're
In
right, you're
Smash
right,
4
you're
where
right.
they were separated. But yeah,
You're
so
correct.
in Smash 4, the gunship is incorporated not just into the final Smash, but also the entrance. The gunship drops her off as well, which is also carried over in Ultimate. But
Very cool.
yeah, in Smash 4, it's like two little lasers, and you use the control stick to
Oh, yeah.
shoot where the lasers are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in Ultimate they change it to Samus going into her power suit and kneeling on the ship, and then firing her power beam instead.
And then also it's part of Ridley's final smash, because that's the one you're talking
That's
about,
what I was
Andy,
thinking of.
where the ship shows up and then Ridley, they're trying to take off in the ship, and Ridley just, plasma screams it to obliteration. So yeah, it's also featured in Ridley's final smash.
This final smash I think is like so awesome because you just get smacked right up against the ship and it just explodes, and I absolutely love it. The only, I guess, negative is that they use the other M version of the gunship, which I mean, to be fair, they use the other M version of the power suit as well. So what do you expect? But hopefully that's updated in the next Smash game to anything else. But
Hey,
I love seeing
I say good. Destroy the other M version. That's the way I like it.
agreed.
Yeah, and by the way, you could purchase the Gunship Spirit from Funky Kong's Shack in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So there you go.
What, in the World of Light, which I don't think I ever finished.
You know what? I actually have to admit, I thought that World of Light was really fun. I wasn't into it at first, but I got really into it, like a lot, and to the point where I had every spirit.
I enjoyed the individual spirit battles, but I thought World of Light was really boring, and for some reason I beat it twice.
Madman.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we also have a pretty big appearance of Samus's ship, and something that we've never really talked about before. And I feel like we gotta cover this at some point here, but this, of course, shows up in the Game of the Year contender, Nintendo Land, in Metroid Blast, where you have a Mii and you're flying around in the gunship and you're using your gyro and stuff like that. I remember playing this like for a couple minutes and thinking like, it is what it is. But I have to admit to you, actually, for what it is, I really, really like the official render of the gunship here. It's like, it's small and compact and obviously like not as, what's the right word? Deadly looking maybe, but like for what it is, I really like this design actually.
Dude, Nintendo Land is so awesome. I actually have to replay that game one of these days. And Metroid Blast in particular, I think is one of the best parts of Nintendo Land. It's actually, for as simple of a tech demo like game it is, like there's so much thought put into it, and especially in co-op, it's so much fun to play with friends, particularly because of that gunship combat. So basically, the Samus player uses the Wii remote and nunchuck. It controls similarly to Prime 3, we're using the Wiimote to aim, joystick to move around, but then the gunship is controlled on the Wii U gamepad, and you get this completely different, like almost overhead view of the maps as opposed to your third-person view that you'll get when you're running and gunning. And there's so much, not only do you play the game differently, but there's also so much interactivity you can do with the player. Like one of the abilities you get as a player is the grapple beam, and you can actually grapple onto the gunship and like fire on enemies. There's so much cool stuff you can do together in co-op with that, and so that's always my big takeaway from that gunship.
Well, you know what? We'll have to do an episode one of these days on Metroid Blast, because I have not played Nintendo Land in like, when did the Wii U come out? 2013?
2012 actually, but yeah.
Oh,
I got mine in 2014.
I think I got mine in 2013. So it's been like over a decade since I played Metroid Blast. Maybe we'll have to do that, because I do remember, you're right, I remember the Metroid portion being one of the more fun versions. Like I remember the Zelda one I was excited for, and that one I feel like kind of stunk. So, but I do remember Metroid Blast being fun. So that might have to be something that we try and do.
Yeah, Metroid Blast, the Mario Chase minigame is so much fun with other people, and then the Luigi's Mansion game is super fun in multiplayer as well. But yeah, Metroid Blast in terms of co-op, definitely like super fun for co-op play.
So we did a quick little shout out to everybody over on Twitter and in Discord, and we were just kind of like, hey, like what's your favorite version of the ship? What are your thoughts on the ship? We had a couple different answers here. Delano7 actually said that the Corruption ship is their favorite, but gave a shout out to the Fusion ship as kind of a dark horse sleeper candidate. Metroid Theorist, this cat comments on our stuff all the time. We love you for always engaging with us. Obviously picked the Super Metroid Starship. And we had a comment actually that I want to read, because I thought that it was kind of cool, or not kind of cool, but like something that I guess you just don't see a lot of anymore. But this was from Minneapolis King. I love the classic Super Metroid gunship, and Echoes and Samus Return just take it to the next level. I'm not a huge fan of the Corruption or Beyond. It's too much like a fighter jet instead of a spaceship that Samus lives in.
Which is funny because that's the exact reason I love it.
I mean, I don't think he's wrong. Yeah, I think that's kind of the point, right? Like, I think that was the entire intent behind it, that it wasn't meant to be a regular ship that she's meant to kind of be comfortable on. It was meant to be something that was likely gonna not survive the events of Prime 3, and it did, but like probably disposable almost in a way, and very much meant to be, like Doom said perfectly, like it's a weapon, more of like a just transportation. So I can understand why someone might not like it for those reasons, but I think certainly that is the intent behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it's different. And I don't think it's just different for different sake. But yeah, I mean, that doesn't super surprise me.
Yeah, well, I mean that's pretty much it. We've kind of tracked down the history, every appearance of the ship. I don't know. Like I guess my favorite. Oh, we don't have to say what our favorite versions are, but I feel
No,
like I
we do.
kind of
What's
love
our
them all.
favorite? What's our favorites? We have no.
Yeah.
Come on, Andy. You can't just have us like, oh,
Oh
this
man.
this is the show. This is the Omega Metroid podcast. We need to pick a favorite. Like our lives
Okay,
depend on it.
I'll pick a favorite if you pick a least. We all have to pick a favorite and a least favorite. How about that?
Okay.
Let's go.
Alright.
God, I don't know, man. I guess my favorite has to be the Super Metroid version. It just kind of barely edges out the. Oh, you know, like I was about to say, it barely edges out the Prime 3 like corruption ship, but I really love the Hunters, the Metroid Prime ship as well. And you're right, like I think the Fusion ship looks awesome. So, but I do. I'm gonna be boring. I'll go with the classic and say it's probably Samus' Starship from Super Metroid and Metroid 2.
I will also be boring because everyone already said what my favorite ship is, and I'm going to go with the next obvious pick, which is the Prime 3, or I guess technically the Prime 4 gunship now, because I really do like all those new details they added there. And then my least favorite ship, as I also stated, probably going to be that Zero Mission ship, which I also still think is pretty good in the right context.
I almost wonder if my least favorite ship is the Metroid Dread version of the Fusion ship.
Okay, I was gonna say like if we can
I think we can be specific.
if we can separate them, then I would say the Metroid Dread version of the Fusion ship is my least favorite ship for sure. But if we're putting them together, I can't say that.
I was hoping you were going to say your favorite was the.
Well, the Fusion one's not my favorite. It's hard because I love all these ships. I think it's the Metroid Prime 1 ship. There's just something about it. Like it kind of like toes the line, I think, between Starship and Gunship for me for these ships. But I also I really love the Corruption ship because it does look like a jet. It looks badass. It's awesome. So I don't know. This is hard, but I would say my favorite is probably the hard pick. I love the classic ship, but like that's also a really good design too. I just love how alien it looks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so bad at picking favorites. Definitely my least favorite is the Dread version of the Fusion ship. But if I had to pick favorite ship, I'm gonna go with the Metroid Prime 1 one. I just love the rocket legs. There's something about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe I'll give my second answer. So my least favorite answer, if we're not allowed to break them up, is the Zero Mission ship, which almost feels unfair.
I still like the Zero Mission ship, and you know what I forgot? The effect I forgot about too. When the landing like stuff for it, it has those like 4 like green like blasting like rockets that are like big like green balls of light like along the wings at the bottom as it lands. So that gives it another point for me because I always love that effect and it looks really cool. I like the I like the Zero Mission ship, and I kind of like that it's the same with the Metroid Prime 1 ship, even though more to an extent that's kind of a one-off, you know. It has, I think, a little more impact because it only does survive that one game. So I don't know. I like the Zero Mission ship. I'm partial to it.
I like the sprite
either.
work at least.
Yeah, like it's not a bad ship. It's just kind of.
Those ships are bad, guys.
I mean, if it had a cool tail, then
Dreadnought.
it would be another level. But no tail, least favorite ship.
I don't know. I don't know if it would make sense for it to have a tail. I feel like it already kind of looks wonky as it is. A tail to
it might not make sense, but it could still have a tail.
It could still have a tail. You're right.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Any final thoughts about the classic Starship or Gunship, as I will just forever have to refer to it, of Samus?
You know, my thing is that I would be interested to see the classic like Super Metroid Prime 2 Return of Samus ship return to like 3D Metroid. But if they do it, I hope they kind of give it more of a sense of like scale and make it bigger. I know it wouldn't really make sense, but like at least in the 2D games, it comes across as bigger. And in Metroid Prime 2, it's essentially the same design, but like the size of the Metroid Prime 1 ship. And I think the perfect version of that for me would be the Metroid Prime 2 ship, like that type of ship, but at the size and scale of like the Return of Samus and Super Metroid versions that just feel bigger and feel more alien and feel like almost like that the District 9 kind of ship just hanging there. Like it just feels so otherworldly, especially the Return of Samus sprite. And I would love for them to try to capture that again in the Prime game somehow. I don't know what would make sense in the context. I think we're just going to get that cool Corruption Prime 4 ship for now, which is I'm totally fine with, but I would love to see them take a stab at that again.
Yeah.
All right. Follow me along here. But do y'all remember in Captain America: The Winter Soldier in the final act? So throughout the movie, he has his brand new kind of modern espionage shield suit. But then for the finale of the movie, he breaks into the Smithsonian and basically steals back his classic suit. Now check this out. Prime 4, we all know Samus has the Prime 3 gunship. Well, at some point, we're saying, like, how does Samus get the classic ship back? Well, in the third act of the game, it has to get destroyed, obviously, and something similar is going to happen. And then, the fanfare is going to play when we see the classic ship now in HD with all the polygons and all the new modern retro detail come out. I don't know. It's obviously not going to happen, but I feel it in my soul. You know what I mean?
I think that could definitely happen.
I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to see like a garage or something that
Why?
we can, because I want to customize the ship. I want to.
But you can customize it without a garage.
Maybe you can, but whatever. I want to be able to like make the ship a little bit more my own. And I'll tell you what else I want to see from the ship. I agree with. And I think that this is going to happen. I want to see that ship in the next Mario Kart game. I think it's going to happen. I think that ship is going to be something that Samus is going to be able to drive, and it's going to be like a kart. I think the next Mario Kart game is going to have like a Super Smash Bros. Style, like more characters in it. I think that's kind of realistic, like what we could be seeing next to this iconic ship.
Speaking of cars, there's also the Rocket League collab where we did get the Samus Gunship themed car as well.
I hate that it's only on the Switch though, because I would use it in Rocket League. Instead I use Lightning McQueen, which was really cool. But I wish Nintendo was cooler with having that spread out a bit more, but I get it. I think that's totally in the realm of possibility. I think customizing this ship would be really cool. I'm totally down for that. And I definitely think that we could see a situation where this ship gets kablooied and we see, the next one show up for sure.
Yeah. I guess it's just a shame that they don't have that Rocket League car in Blast Ball, because, I could use that. All right.
I will say though, I hope that, by the way, I hope Mario Kart stays Mario Kart. I hope it doesn't become Nintendo Kart.
I agree. I think so. Totally off topic, but I totally agree. I'm totally not opposed to like adding, more guest characters. But the way I look at it is, treat those non-Mario characters like the third-party characters in Smash, where they're hype. There's still like big showpieces, but at the end of the day, it's still a Nintendo fighting game. They're guest characters, and I think that's how the non-Mario characters should be treated in Mario Kart.
Turn it into Nintendo Kart. Just do it.
I feel like it I don't know. I like that it's more like I would almost rather see more random Mario characters in the game than other franchises
really?
show up.
Yeah, bring
You'd rather have Metal Baby Luigi than like Samus or Starship?
No, I want Wart from Mario 2. I want Egad from Luigi's Mansion. I want Totanga from Mario Land. Bring in some of the Wario Land characters.
You know what?
I want a Pianta or something.
You know what? Okay, I'll give you that. Syrup would be cool.
There's a lot more Mario characters I think would be cool. And also on another note, I would like to stay Mario Kart and not like Diddy Kong Racing, which is great, and I wish that would come back. But like, let's keep the stuff on the you add a ship. It's not Mario ship. It's Mario Kart.
Oh no, that was the best thing about. Anyways,
well, no, I agree. No, I agree. I think that should be its own thing, though. Bring back Diddy Kong Racing, and then also keep Mario Kart as is. I don't know why they don't. They gotta bring back Diddy Kong Racing.
It's a travesty. Why we've never got. Anyways, yeah, you're right though. They keep on bringing in all these jabroni characters, and they got cool Mario characters that they're still not doing anything with. I don't know what the deal is there, but we'll see. I guess in the next Mario Kart game, maybe in 2025 when the Switch 2 comes out. So maybe we'll not.
I think the Switch 2 drops with a new Mario Kart.
I think it does too.
I think it launches with Mario Kart 9. I feel like that would be like the ultimate launch title for Switch 2.
I will buy it.
Yeah, I would too.
and I will say, as awful as Mario Kart Tour is, they actually did have some really cool roster choices. Like they added King Bob-omb from Mario 64, which was super awesome. They added Dixie Kong of all characters in Tour, and they They brought back Funky Kong as well, who also got re-added again later to the DLC after years missing from Mario Kart Wii, so that was pretty cool. They added Poochie from the Yoshi games.
Poochie is super cool. Yeah, from Yoshi's Story and Yoshi's Island, Poochie. But they got to bring back Rob. Rob, I always thought was super cool in Mario Kart DS.
Yeah, he was cool.
That was my first experience because that came out just before Brawl did. Because that was like 2006, I think, and I was like, oh, the real Rob is in the game.
Yeah,
like,
that was pretty cool.
I used Rob. I 100% used Rob.
So like that's what I'm talking about. Not like Dry Bones Bowser. Who cares about that? Come on.
Hey, Dry Bowser is awesome. Don't hate on Dry Bowser.
I'm not gonna lie. I think like Pink Gold Peach and like Cat Tanuki Mario are funny, and I think that's where you're supposed to do it, is in Mario Kart. Like, don't put it in a real Mario game, but like give me gold-plated Koopa Troopa in Mario Kart. I don't know. I think that's funny. Like, it's supposed to be a goofy game.
Well, it is goofy, that's for dang sure. But I'll tell you what, guys. Let's go ahead. Let's get out of here. We want to thank everybody for, of course, listening to this. This has got to be the most in-depth discussion of Samus's Gunship ever recorded. Ever. So glad.
Maybe not most in depth, but definitely the longest.
Definitely the longest. Well, I don't know. Doesn't longest?
Maybe not the longest.
We'll see. If you know of a more in depth or longer discussion about this Starship, let me know, and we'll make another one that's even longer. But we are going to get out of here. Again, thanks everybody for checking us out, and of course, we want to encourage you to go and like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever. Give us a like, give us a review. That would be really awesome, and tell your friends where they can get their weekly Metroid fix. Check out OmegaMetroid.com. We have tons of new guide work that is over there. So lots of new stuff coming in over at the website. Maps, guides, news, you name it, it's there. Our YouTube channel, make sure that you go subscribe. And if you ever want to, you can watch our lovely faces as we do these shows every single week. So make sure that you're giving us a subscription there. We do indeed have a Patreon. If you want to take your Omega Metroid love to the next level, that's patreon.com/spnet. We have bonus shows that go out there monthly, so that's been a lot of fun. And I think that's all the shilling that we need to do today, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, just want to wish everybody a fantastic week, and we will see everybody back here same time next week. Until then.